everybody knows the term time is money. But when it comes to purchasing or selling real estate, time is of the essence, is a very real thing. And I'm here to break down what really happens in a home inspection. This is a very critical step in the purchasing or selling process. And inspectors don't just climb on roofs and run some pipes and faucets and everything. There's a lot more involved. And just like everything, you get what you pay for, because time is ticking, and that could mean a lot of money in and out of your pocket. So please stay tuned. I'm going to dive into really what's involved and all of the strategic elements of a home inspection. Stay tuned. Well, and if you've been watching me for a while, you know that I'm a big fan of checklists because it keeps me on track. But not just for videos, for my contracts, for my new listings, for like every business system, there's a checklist for everything. It keeps me organized. It keeps things moving along. And like I said, the beginning of this clip for the video, time is money and time is of the essence. So I'm very, very organized and very meticulous. I stay ahead of the contract deadlines, one of which is the most important, really, is the inspection, because your buyer puts a good amount of money down usually to hold the property, for the seller to take their property pending. Okay. And if for any reason the buyer is in default, they are risking a lot of money. And it's your job as the realtor to ensure that they are not risking their escrow deposit, right? So especially as a buyer's agent. But there's so many elements to a home inspection. I guess I don't even really know where to start, but I figured one of the most important components is helping your client save money. And one of the things an inspector does are they produce these insurance reports. There's two insurance reports: wind mitigation report and a potentially a 4-point inspection report. The wind mitigation report will show any credits that you can get for wind mitigation. It's for hurricane, like a lot of the hurricane items, like straps in the clip down straps in the roof. If you have anything basically that would give you a discount on your hazard or homeowner's insurance, it needs to be outlined in a specific report, not just the regular home inspection report. The home inspection report does not go to the insurance agent. That is just for each party's edification, just clarification as to the good standing or bad standing of the property, what the findings were. The insurance reports go strictly to the insurance company that the buyer may be utilizing or for quote purposes. And so things like hurricane shutters, if you have impact windows and sliders, obviously, there's a whole list of items on that report that are very obviously well worth it, because if you don't have a wind mitigation report to showcase all of those great improvements to offset the risk reward, your insurance rates will be sky high, and then likewise, the same for the 4-point. The 4-point goes through the 4 points of the home for generally older homes. So generally it's like 20 plus year older properties require that 4-point report. So those are two very important documents that your inspector will either ask you for, they should ask you for, and provide or offer to be provided for usually an additional cost to the general inspection report. So these are really important pieces of your inspection. Now, as you all know, I've got a great vendor list. I typically am very, very loyal with the vendors that I work with, of course, including inspectors. And depending on the client and depending on the property, I work with a couple different people, right? One of my home inspectors, he brings in a whole team. So while you're at the home on the same day, it'll be him, his roofer, his AC person, the pool person, the termite guy, if there's a septic tank, a septic deck. So in other words, it's like the home is crawling with people, right? Whatever the home has in terms of big systems, there will be individual licensed vendors in their respective fields. They're on site to evaluate the home. And what I love about this inspector too is, along with that, each vendor, if there is something that they see during the inspection period or in the inspection itself, they will also attach a repair replacement quote along with that. And again, going back to my introduction to this video, time is money, time is of the essence. I cannot tell you in my career how many times a buyer's agent will have a general inspector and then like the next day somebody else, the next day. So imagine if you're the homeowner and you're living there and you have people in and out for a week, 10 days, 2 weeks. It's exhausting, it's time consuming, and it's kind of irritating. It's a lot of coordination. So having an inspector that can just do everything and just be like, just meet them all there is absolutely a godsend. It's wonderful. It's such a great concept. I highly recommend it. And you get what you pay for. You're going to pay a little bit more because you're saving the time, right? Time is money. If that extra day or two means the seller, needs to go out and find another house because they're contingent on buying the other house or selling the other house, that is critically important, And so when that clock starts, it goes. And so, and also great inspectors book up. So if you only have a 7-day inspection period, you want to get that booked right away and make sure that you have an extra a day or two buffer, because on the 7th day, if you've negotiated a 7-day inspection period, on day 7, if there's any inclination that the buyer is like, wow, there's way too many things on this as is contract that I didn't know about, and I'm going to need to back out, you have to either, so on day 7, if you're like, well, if they don't repair all of these things, we're going to have to cancel. So essentially on day 7, the buyer has to remit to the seller both a repair or credit request addendum with a cancellation and release addendum. So simultaneously, that sounds weird, but if you feel like the seller's just going to say no on an as-is contract to repairs or credits, you have to send in the release and cancellation on the same day. Otherwise, you're putting your escrow at risk. So if you have $20,000 in escrow and you don't add that release and cancellation form on the 7th day, even if your intention is not to cancel, then you will be risking your escrow deposit no matter what. So that's why I'm like, time is money. Time is of the essence. It's critical because there's also 2 different contracts. So we mostly use and have been using the as-is contract here over the last few years, post-COVID. And during COVID, it's interesting because a lot of agents, sellers can be really picky and they would be like, nope, we only want the regular Florida FAR bar contract, or nope, we only want the as-is contract. Now it's primarily the as-is contract. It's cleaner. It's just, and that's another video topic. But anyway, the time just goes really quickly, and it's important that your agent is really on top of these because you never want to risk your client's escrow. What about mold? That is a common question with people. We live in a very humid climate, and mold is a real thing. So my general take on mold is, okay, if you're uber sensitive and you have allergies or there's just major sensitivity, you can have the inspector prepared or order a mold inspection, a mold kit. There's a kit. They have to take samples and send it to a lab. So that is an option. Now, if you're not uber sensitive, and of course it's a concern even if you're not uber sensitive. So I guess what I'm trying to say is what I generally recommend is when the general inspector goes out to the home, and if they see evidence of or any inclination that there might be mold, like toxic, we're talking about toxic mold, right? Because every household actually has everyday household molds, but what we're really talking about is the toxic mold, right? That you can see the spores, that's like black and just like moldy, if they see evidence of that, they will suggest further evaluation, right? And just like mold, just like any other system in the home, if you don't have someone that brings in all these vendors, right, individual to their unique field, like a roofer, an AC person, they will not generally say further evaluation needed because they're the expert in that particular component of the house. So in that case, in the mold case, if the inspector says, I recommend further evaluation, you might have to extend the inspection period. See, that's another piece of this. So you might have to extend that. The seller may or may not understand. You're going to have to sell that to the seller, and most sellers will understand that if you're the buyer. So that's just something that, and if they don't extend it, then you can back out. And also, if they don't extend it, you might wonder, like, why are they worried about mold, So that's a common question. We see a lot of roof questions because it correlates to your homeowner's insurance costs. That's a huge, huge thing with inspections right now, because even if your 20-year tile roof is only 20 years, it could last another 30. Home insurance companies might say it's 20 years old, it's toward the end of its useful life. I've been seeing that too. And you're just like, this thing is going to last another lifetime, another generation. And so it can be frustrating, but it kind of is what it is. So it depends on the transaction. What I like to do, because I was just looking at some comparables for another party this week, and all of them have tile roofs. And I went back and looked at similar age homes that have recently sold in there to see if the sellers gave a credit to the buyer toward closing costs in the notes. That is something that I can do to get ahead of it for my clients, saving time. Time is money. To see, like, okay, the trend in your neighborhood is this neighbor, this one that just sold, gave a credit because in pulling the permits, their roof is also original and they didn't have to do that. So that's a good thing for you. So the trend is saying, okay, probably you won't have to. Maybe when they sell again, they might have to. That's a big piece. Plumbing and electric too. There's some homes that have really old pipes, the old cast iron or polybutylene pipes. The polybutylene pipes were they stopped production of those like in the 90s because they were hazardous. And so if someone buys a home with those type of pipes and they have a really hard time getting insurance, or the insurance premiums are through the roof, it poses a problem that the seller has to address as well, because again, the cost, the diminishing rate of return for that new buyer, you're going to have to address that one way or the other, right? Because if the cost to insure the home based on the home inspection report and the diminishing rate of return, or whatever you want to call it, because of the cost of insurance doesn't make sense, that buyer is probably going to walk away. So, and then electrical panel, that's another big one, right? So if it's an original electrical panel from the 60s and your insurance provider's like, that all needs to be updated, like it could cost $5,000 just for the electrical panel. Or if you have several in a home, it's not an inexpensive thing to upgrade. And so I think the bottom line here is you want to have an inspector that is very comprehensive, very detailed, and ideally they come all at once, right? Sometimes like a septic guy might come later, or a pool person, because they don't need access to the interior of the home. That's fine. But within a day or two is absolutely ideal, because you're on the day 7 comes and goes, right? These inspectors are busy. The good ones are busy, just like good realtors, And I heard. But yeah, I would rather pay a little bit more to get a solid inspection done and be able to negotiate if they find major things wrong with the house, be able to negotiate in terms of repairs, replacements, or big credits. Because even during like a roof negotiation, I've negotiated, generally speaking, if the roof is done and needs complete replacement, generally over the years, what I've seen is that the seller contributes half of what it would cost toward the buyer's closing costs. And the buyer, in order to get insurance, in order to buy an insurance, and then the underwriters to approve their loan, they need to sign with the roofing company saying that the roof will be replaced within 30 days of closing. So that's a kind of a way to work around that. So really, and then everything else is sort of minor. I mean, you know, these inspectors always find something like balance rods, caulk. These are things that come up on like every report. You know, we're just talking about the big fundamental, big ticket item things. Foundations. I haven't had too many of those. You'll see a lot of settling cracks in Florida from the floors to the sides of the structure, the envelope of the property. A lot of these are settling cracks. So, oh, and then another one too is checking for leaking pools. And we've got people for that we work with, and they'll go in and dive into the pool, check the pipes, check the seals, all that stuff. I actually had to have that done on my pool, and I was like, you know, I knew it was like clogged because I have the leaves or whatever, but I felt like that was it, and that was it. But you just never know. You rather catch things too, like in advance. But yeah, a great inspector is very, very valuable. And I'll tell you one last thing. Even on new construction, and you wouldn't think that, but when I work with people buying new construction, I tell you, when a buyer has an agent, the builder and the sales rep tend to, I don't know, dot their I's and cross their T's a little bit more. And when you produce a report saying, hey, can you do this, and like we're overseeing the project, things don't get overlooked as much. You know what I'm saying? And not that this was a plug on new construction, but as a buyer, you don't get a discount for not working with a realtor. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the builders are really incentivizing both buyers and agents right now to purchase new construction. So I've seen stuff like offering a pool, adding a pool to the deal. Like it's, you know, so invaluable part of the purchasing and selling process on both sides, really, the buyer side and the seller side. So the inspection is a really big hurdle to cross during a contract period. So I'm here for you. And I work with a lot of out of state and out of area clients. So I can be your eyes and ears, of course. I know what to look for and what questions to ask. And like me being there as your eyes and ears really helps my clients, like I said, especially if they're not here, to be here for inspections. And that's very common. So I don't know, if you need an inspector, you call me. And like I said, thank you for watching, subscribing, sharing. I really appreciate you guys over the years and can't thank you enough. If you have any real estate needs, I service Manatee, Sarasota, and Charlotte counties. It's a wide area. So you're welcome to call me, text me, email me anytime. ShaylaTwitt.com is my website. My cell is 941-544-7690.